Evolution in Divine Love is an invitation to reimagine everything from the place where it all begins and where it all returns. Love.
Welcome back to another episode of Evolution in Divine Love podcast. We continue with Chapter 3, Mapping the Soul's Unbroken Potential. And today we'll be covering two sections in the book. The first one is Humility and Love as Co-Emergent and Ever-Evolving. And the second part of our episode will be with Rabbi Nahum, Ward-Lev, and we'll be discussing human beings versus human becomings. So this should be a wonderful discussion today. And thank you all for coming and giving your time to this conversation. So we'll begin again with humility and love as co-emergent and ever-evolving. So Maharaj, earlier in this chapter, you quoted Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where it's said that love between the sweet absolute and his companions reveals a thirst that is the mother of sheer humility and simply grows stronger and stronger. And again, in this section, you invoke that same phrase, the mother of sheer humility. So this section is dedicated to that. So it reveals to me the importance of it. So you begin by pointing out what humility is not, and emphasize true humility is not self-diminishing. So how is it that we can safeguard humility from becoming toxic shame, as you mentioned in this section?
Yeah, to begin with, by hearing you, I was kind of redimensioning or rediscovering this expression of love is the mother of sheer humility. It's a beautiful way of describing love as a mother, in turn to motherly terms, and humility being a child, a natural child of love. So there has to be a loving quality to that humility, right? And again, paradoxically, many times when we speak or try to be humble, it's many times in very unloving ways. So for me, the expression of loving the mother of sheer humility implies it's coming from a loving womb. So humility has to bear the similar DNA to her mother, so to say. So mom is love, humility has to be loving. So we have to be loving in our being humble, loving to ourselves, loving to everyone else, of course. So that's an interesting point that came just now. But I agree that many times when talking about humility or any other thing, but especially things like humility or terms like surrender, that many times are weaponized in religious circles, consciously or unconsciously, we may need to start with via negativa, right? By saying what that thing is not, and deconstructing, dismantling so many false values, false beliefs, anarthas, basically about what we think humility is, and then how we are trying to do the impossible, which is embrace humility in unloving ways, and that's not humility. So for me, what safeguards us from doing that again is to have a proper coherent definition of humility that we are just sharing. Okay, it's the baby of love, so it has to be loving. Keep that yardstick next to you. So whenever you're trying to measure, so to say, or to scan humility in yourself or others, you can find that lovingness, loving concern, kindness. Try to make the point in this section, which, to be honest, the main intention of this section was basically that, to redefine humility in a way that is healing, healthy, sustainable, and in connection to principles like awe and wonder. When we are in front of something truly wonderful, truly infinite, truly deep, beautiful, we cannot but be humble. We cannot but be drawn to put our heads in the ground, so to say, to revere, to venerate that. So that has to be the ideal point. Like Father Richard Rohr will say, surrender has to be out of awe and wonder. We could apply a similar logic to humility, right? Where we witness something truly awesome or wonderful, humility comes, like the natural gesture of expression of being meeting something bigger than ourselves, and in a way that is humbling but nourishing at the same time. Again, loving humility. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. And it also, in my mind as well, it brings a question, because it speaks of this understanding of humility being an aspect or an envelope of awe, that, it's because there's so much more that we can see from where we are. But I've often heard people using that as an excuse to then say that because there is more, then where they are is nowhere. Like kind of denying something that actually is real within themselves, that is a realistic thing within their own journey and in the moment, even though there is so much more. Do you have something to say in regards to that?
Well, yeah, that again, basically going back to my previous point, that humility has to be based on a loving, positive appreciation of things, not denial, not like a negative orientation. Humility is about saying there is nothing, I'm nothing, there has never been nothing, it's never enough. No, but from a place of appreciation, gratitude, acknowledgement of what's already there, as we were talking before about the soul being amazing, and there is a place to acknowledge that in a humbling way. Again, it's not that one excludes the other. It's not that by acknowledging that there is something there, at that precise moment, I stop being humble. No, there are different ways and levels of being humble, right? Of course, we can hear, as I quote also in my book, I don't know, Sri Chaitanya saying, in me there is not even the aroma of love. And we may say, oh, you are not being humble, Chaitanya Dev. You are not acknowledging what you already have. You have to build upon that. No, but he's expressing humility in a way that is probably way far from how we are supposed to express humility. For him, that's the natural way to express humility. For us, that will be probably toxic imitation. For us, it may be more healthy to learn to see the positive and acknowledge what has come, and at the same time acknowledge the grace that is in between all that, because it's not just upon us, and it's all about our own deeds and effort and personal input. There are so many elements in every action, playing so many factors at the same time, environment again. So the fact that there's always more, and again, this is always a fine line to navigate, how to navigate this holy dissatisfaction and this thirst for more eternally, in a way that is not downplaying or even negating any present achievement. So actually, I will say it's on the foundation of properly acknowledging what we have, that we can attain all that there is to be had or experienced or loved, like sedimentary layers. So it's not like by pursuing the next new upgrade of myself, it's not like I'm rejecting all the previous things, but all of them are included in that new upgrade, no? Plus something else. We were talking about that these recent days, that by sometimes we use the expression dying to something or releasing a previous version of ourselves in order to pursue the newer upgraded version that is available, so to say, in terms of potential. But that doesn't mean that whenever I pursue that new version and I embrace it, everything else disappears, but everything else is included there, plus, no, something else. So that will be a way of acknowledging what we have in a genuine way, what's real, what's true, what's worthy of gratitude and acknowledgement, and not feeling that we have to lose that to pursue the next thing. And I'm not saying everyone should express humility in that way, but at certain stage, for most of us, I will say that's the healthiest way to address it.
Something that came to my mind is how in the temples there's this practice of reciting the third verse of Shikshashtakam like every morning. It's like how mechanically it's repeated, and having this false understanding of humility, like based on like what we know, which is like often like, toxic shame and like, all the other things associated with that. And we think that's what humility is, and we already want to have that quality without having a proper understanding that it is something that is naturally building slowly, gradually. And in this section, you also talk about pure devotee, right? What does it mean to be a pure devotee? It's not like a one-time event. You don't just like, become pure devotee and that's it. Like, it's a gradual process and it continues to evolve. So humility also like seems the same way, that it seems like a gradual process. It's not that we don't have any humility now and then at one point we receive all of it. So there is like a gradual process. That's what it seems to me.
Yeah, it's all a gradual process. Of course, I wouldn't say regarding the third verse of Shikshashtakam that you mentioned that is recited in some temples, depending which particular Gaudiya Vaishnava group we are talking about, they may recite that daily, may not. But of course, we don't want to universalize everyone is doing that mechanically or going through those motions. But I totally agree that it can happen that way if we don't take the time to actually, again, reflect upon the meaning of the words and the healthy expression of them. And what you mentioned, which is something that goes beyond humility and applies to so many other things, like you mentioned, becoming a devotee or a pure devotee or attaining love or being humble or whatever, having received initiation. And generally we tend to see those things as one-time events, right? Which is another expression of black and white thinking, right? Before this, I was this, and now after this, I am this. That's it, black and white. I was white till yesterday, now I'm black, or vice versa. So I think that's very symptomatic of beginner's mind. Again, we are not condemning that, just analyzing the pattern of the journey. When we tend to think in terms, okay, I was not saved, now I'm saved. I was not initiated, I'm initiated. I was not a devotee, I'm a devotee. I was not humble. At one point, I'm not humble yet, but at one point I'll be humble. But we don't have like a clear idea of what we mean. Many times we just hope, and many times in terms of magical thinking, right? I'm in the material world, but at one point I'll be in the spiritual world, and we don't see that as an ongoing journey of unfolding, which of course it may reach a point of officially you having attained divine love, officially having attained the type of consciousness that corresponds with the spiritual world. I'm not denying there is such an official moment and point, but of course that continues to unfold after that. But still, to reach that particular point, it's a whole process. So I think that that's something that will characterize more the way of thinking and living of what we will call a Madhyam Bhagavat, right? Or an intermediate practitioner, which includes and integrates more nuance, more dynamics, more in-betweens, and tends to see things more as processes, as ongoing processes, rather than statics, one-time performances, from point A to point B, end of the game, black and white thinking. So I think it's a healthy exercise to pay attention to our own thinking processes and see how many things I see in my life as one-time events. Even things so basic as, okay, I got married. Okay, that's one-time event, but to renew your vows and to choose your partner and so many things that actually entail a marriage, that's an ongoing process, which requires daily choice, daily investment, just to give examples of our daily experience. So everything is an ongoing process. Even, again, me as a sannyas, my taking of vows. I officially took sannyas 7th of May 2009. Okay, that was a one-time act but that was just the official beginning of that journey, which even began before the official day of the journey. So you cannot even put a finger and say it began here, it ended here. It's difficult to establish those markings at one point. So the very question of establishing those dissolves at one point, and we realize it's an ongoing journey.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have clarified that it was a mechanical process for me personally, and not
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
general.
Holding yourself accountable is empowering. Thank you for doing that. And not only for you, just in case you are not alone in that.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, like, with the humility, I'm not personally thinking every day that, like, oh, I should be humble, but I'm thinking this is something that would happen naturally. But would you say that it should still be an intentional thing that we have to be mindful of and, like, try to be humble some way? Somehow I think that is a natural thing and cannot be just like thought and become.
Yeah, as we have been talking recently, we have to be careful with those sentences which that begin with "I have to" and "I should." No, I have to be humble. Why? That in itself points that there is some separate agenda beyond being humble. I have to be humble. What's behind that? Why you have to be humble? Because if I'm humble, and you fill in the blanks there, or because if I'm not humble, this will happen to me, whatever, right? So yeah, ideally humility is a symptom, natural symptom of love, of living a loving life. It's not something that we are all day thinking, I have to be humble, I should be humble, how I'm to be humble in this particular. It's not, I mean, once Thomas Merton said that beautifully. He said humility is a virtue, not a neurosis. Very simply, but very geniusly. Because he probably, I'm sure he said that after having witnessed how humility is made. As humility, love is the mother of sheer humility. For many, so-called humility is the mother of sheer neurosis. So probably he has witnessed that a lot, and he's trying to make the point, this should be a virtue. This is something that makes us, that is dignifying. No, so how to do that? And again, yeah, if you gain a proper understanding of humility, probably you are not all day thinking how to be humble, but you are being humble, and you know that there's always no limit to be humble, and of course you are open to that. I'm not saying that at some points it's not healthy to remind yourself what it means to be humble, to hear about it. Of course it's healthy and necessary, especially in the beginning of the humility journey. But at one point I will say, yeah, we are being carried by the momentum of humility, and it will take different shapes. What it means to be humble, again, when we are talking about humility here, it's not one single thing. We have to be careful again. It's not one thing, and once I do it, I have it, one time act. So humility will take different shapes. So probably a better question, and hopefully not a neurotic one, across our journey will be how humility, how I'm being invited to embrace humility in this particular day, in this particular stage of the journey, and not so much I should be humble, because that I should be humble already entails a particular idea of what it means to be humble, and instead of the openness to how humility will look like today, how I'm being invited to embrace that, and of course, hopefully doing all that because I want, because I have understood, and I have chosen to embrace such virtue, to embrace a life of humility, to embrace a life of love, again, in relation to which humility becomes like a natural byproduct.
And it seems so interesting when we consider how God himself is controlled by love. So how our humility must play into that, because God becomes controlled by love. So it seems like humility does need to be present and accounted for. Otherwise, the relationship and the intention to love can really be skewed by the fact that God comes under the control of love.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because if you have someone who comes under your control, under the control of love, but if you have love, you have God Himself coming under your control, and you are not. That in itself is a humble, ultimate humility. But you need the ultimate humility to honor the other person's ultimate humility, because if not, it ends up in abuse, right? If someone becomes controlled by your love and you don't honor that with proper humility, what will happen then, right? So ultimately, yeah, humility invites for humility, and so humility is humbling by nature, right? If someone is truly humble, and we are in an ideal environment, as we are talking now, between God and His lovers, love will increase, humility will increase, and the more love increases, the more humility increases, and the more humility increases, the more humility increases to respond to that humility, right? So the environment is, as you say, safeguarded from abuse, exploitation, manipulation of the other person being falling at your feet and controlled by your love, basically, right? So if something else will happen, that will be entirely counterintuitive, and there is no place for that. That's why we could say there is perfect humility in love. Again, love is the mother of sheer humility. So real love warranties that humility is there to safeguard the byproducts of love, which is to be controlled by love. So it has to be that way, So love gives birth to humility, and humility in both directions of the loving equation safeguards the whole thing by keeping everyone humble, because everyone not only is humble, but everyone is falling under the control of love. So everyone being under the control, not of each other, but of a love that is more and more humble. So everything remains safe space, so to say, because if not, who knows what we'll have. And of course, we can see that in this world, with many times we speak about love, but there's not actual love, or we speak about humility, but there's not a healthy embodiment of that. And when those things, two people combine from those unintegrated places in the name of love and in the name of humility, we have sometimes very dysfunctional, dangerous scenarios, abusive, so many things. But when proper love, which begets proper humility, is in place from both sides of the equation, that increases the safety, increases the loving interaction, and the humility, again, without end. So thank you. That was good, great highlight.
And one last thing is, I remembered a couple episodes ago, Swetadweep Radhika invoked this notion of necessity being the mother of invention. So I can kind of see that in play here, that the necessities of love invoke the invention of more humility, and more humility invokes the necessity of deeper and more abiding intimacy.
Yeah, that what makes me think of this verse from Brihad Bhagavatamrita that I quote in this section, where Sanatana Goswami says, Prema and Dainya, or love and humility, are cause and effect of each other. The more love, the more humility, the more humility, the more love, and so on and so forth. No, which again is a nice thing to say as a slogan, but now we are kind of playing out the implications of what does it mean in practice, in relationship, which I think is another dimension to understand a verse like that. So thank you for having shown me that.
Okay, thank you both. I'm wondering if there's anything that either of you would like to add to this discussion here today. Okay.
It's time more humble for me. So I have my homework here.
Welcome to part 2 of our episode, Human Beings and Human versus Human Becomings. We have the wonderful opportunity to welcome Rabbi Nahum, Ward-Lev, to the conversation. And if you haven't seen it yet, Swami Padmanabha did a Free Radical podcast with Rabbi, and it was so wonderful, where they talked about lead learners. So I highly recommend that you tune into that. And again, today we'll be talking about human beings versus human becomings. So, Rabbi, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I'll start us off with a contemplation, and you can respond as you like. So the text that we're talking about today, it contrasts human beings with human becomings. So how would you describe that difference in simple terms to you? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. I note that in the Bible, in the Hebrew Scriptures, in the book of Exodus, when Moses asked God, what is God's name? God doesn't quite answer that, but says, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, which it means, I will be what I will be. It's interesting, it's often translated as, I am that I am. I think I am what I am is what Popeye the Sailor Man said. And that the divine is a moving, is a becoming, is an evolving, is an unfolding, and so we're all a part of God's becoming. We're all a part of God's becoming. And there's all kinds of forces in the world and in the human ego that resists becoming because it's unsettling and uncertain. And Swami's friend Ilya Delio talks about actually the root of sin is our resistance to becoming a part of the one. Yeah. So I think the truth of human existence is that all of life is a flow, and we're a part of that flow. And yet the human mind, which desires to be in control and to understand and feel things are somewhat certain, resists seeing the full dynamic of that unfolding.
Well, that's so beautiful and highly in line with so many other traditions. I also just attended a conference of open and relational theology where so much of this was spoken about as well, just very similar language. So it's beautiful to see the same concepts being held and supported and vesseled in many traditions.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And you also checked off like 2 or 3 of my future questions. So that was also wonderful too. So in the book Evolution and Divine Love, it says that who we are is inseparably linked to what we can become. So what do you understand this relationship between, how do you understand the relationship between essence and potential?
Oh, what a great question. And I really love this part of Swami's teaching, that we're not only, in a sense, moved forward by the unfolding of creation, but we're drawn forward by the unfolding of creation. I love that part of his teaching, and the sense that our soul deeply resonates with the one and is drawn towards the one from which we came. And so our soul is drawn to become closer and closer and closer to the one, to our potential for becoming, and yearns to unfold in the direction of being with the one, being resonant with the one, being in harmony with the one. So there's that sense of yearning that draws us forward. There's a book in the Hebrew Scriptures, the Song of Songs, which in the understanding, the rabbinic understanding, is really it's a love song, a series of love songs between a man and a woman, but the rabbis understand it all as between the human soul and God. And a powerful theme in the Song of Songs is this deep yearning of the human soul for the love of the other, of the one, and that yearning that draws us forward. Yeah.
I was thinking that in this section, it's also said that this becoming needs of like fertile soil, or like basically to say that love is so crucial, like in this process of becoming. So I was wondering, like, have you experienced this in your own life, and do you proactively like try to foster this within your community and in your practice, where you've seen this like being an important element without which we cannot actually like move towards our potential, like move towards our becoming?
Yes. Thank you, Sveta. That's such a beautiful question. By the way, I feel a little humbled that I'm answering all of the questions so far, seeing in the presence of these two wise women. And so I hope that I won't be the only one answering questions. So yes, I know, as I said at the outset, that tonight is the era of the evening of our New Year's, and in our calendar, the day starts with the sunset. And so tonight is the beginning of the new year. And it's really a time of moral reckoning, both individually and communally. And Jewish people have a heck of a lot of moral reckoning to do this particular year. And I said then that one can do a moral reckoning in a way that's violent, like, oh, I need to get better. The taskmaster, that, the psychic whips that we can take out and inflict upon ourselves in our effort to get better, to improve, to not make the same mistake again, the harshness that we can bring upon ourselves. And I said that actually, the only way that we really grow is nurtured by love, and that it's helpful to have the wisdom to see clearly that I think in some way our contemporary culture has a worship. I'm speaking now of contemporary mass culture in the United States as the context I'm speaking within, that has in its own sense, in some ways, a worship of violence, a belief in that violence can make things happen, violence can get things done. We don't like violence, but at least it can make something happen, get done, a belief in. And I think we need to deeply interrogate that worship of violence, or that idolatry that holds up violence in that way, because all human growth comes from the nurturance of love, because it's love that connects us to the deep, deep source of our being, to being itself with a capital B, to the mystery, to the source. And it's when we're in the flow, in Hebrew, it's the shefa, the flow of that creative energy from source, then we can grow and become. So in that way, love is essential. And I liked, Sveta, that you asked me in terms of my own personal practice, because I find it deeply challenging to do. And it's very much at the center of my own spiritual edge, I would say, to bring love forward. Yes.
Thank you. It's actually humbling to hear you say that, because it is challenging even for us, and I really appreciate everything you shared. Interestingly, just earlier, I was sharing this example of, I heard this example somewhere, like, that you have, you can allow a mango to ripen like a natural process, or you can beat a mango to ripen it. So you can beat it so it becomes soft and changes color, but the end result is not the same. There's like such a huge difference between the two, you know. So what you're saying, like, you know, you can do this through violence, you can try to achieve the result you want, but that's not the way, you know. Like, so here in this case, you can see the end result, they're different, right? And also what came to my mind is, just before we began this session, you were talking about patience. So patience is such a key element here in waiting for the natural process to happen, like, you know, just witnessing the beauty in that and allowing that flow and all of that, and how patience plays a key role. I was, I'm interested to know what you were saying about, like, patience has its root in the word, in some word I forgot, sorry, uh, which means suffering. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm interested to know how you connect that. Like, what does it speak? How does it speak to you, and what does it mean to you?
Yes. You know, I think that you know, in a sense, I became interested in. I came from a very, very assimilated Jewish family, and if anyone in my high school or college graduation found out that I was a rabbi, they would be shocked. I actually started out as a historian and in university, and I felt like there was something that was really off about contemporary culture for me. Many things were very beautiful, but something off. And part of the off was the message that you know, if you work hard and are a good boy, and I mean boy, not girl, then you can have a life that's pretty much free of suffering. There's a message about that you know that suffering can be avoided or exported or something like that. And there's something about being a mortal touched by the infinite that brings suffering, that we can never be all that we aspire to be, that we taste the infinite and yet we live in limited, finite, aging bodies. And so to be with life is to be with suffering. It's part of the wisdom of Buddhism, I think, as I understand it, that there is something inherently, you know, suffering. And so you know, waiting and patience can involve suffering, you know, and you know, when we speak about love, it's really love requires deeply trusting in life, and that means that I'm in some way surrendering some aspect of my control over to life itself. And so things aren't going to unfold according to my agenda or my timeline or my wishes for it to be. They're going to unfold how life does unfold. And so I need to, the Hebrew be savlanut, I need to have patience, which is rooted in suffering. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, it does. That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, could you please tell, like, what word it is exactly that, like you said, patience, like, is connected to this word. So I'm curious what.
yeah. So the infinitive in Hebrew, at least bol, means to suffer. And so savlanut is the word for patience. It comes from the same three-letter root of to suffer, savlanut.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a big topic, right? Suffering. Like a lot of people have questions on that, like why do we suffer, why there is suffering and all that. But yeah, it's really beautiful, like connecting that suffering and patience, like waiting for the process and for things to evolve, like with love.
Yes.
It seems also another aspect of the suffering. Perhaps we could consider that it's the pain of longing, also the
Yes.
suffering of longing
Yes.
that comes with
Yes.
the evolution of love, and and the other aspect of suffering being, when we suffer, it feels as if those things that we have hung our sense of self on, those things, our values, have a have fall away, and that's when we experience something as suffering. The shelters that we have taken
Yes.
refuge in, or
Yes.
relationships, or something that has given our life meaning. They fall away, and then so the pain of meaninglessness and purposelessness is there, and it creates an opportunity for us to reorient ourselves, and to take a look at those things where we did take shelter in, and see if they were worthy of that, and if they actually move us toward love, and we can then, in these moments of suffering, come in contact with new ways of being, because the old ways are kind of done away with, and the new ways of being are kind of sprouting, and that moves us in our becoming. So suffering serves becoming.
Yes, I think that's right, that suffering serves becoming. And I also hasten to add that as a very privileged white male in the United States of America, the suffering that I need to endure is infinitesimal, invisible compared to suffering in many, many other parts of the world. And so I really can't speak about, I can only speak within the suffering that I experience. I really wouldn't want to generalize beyond that, because the suffering in the world is so immense that we need to turn our attention to. And yeah, it feels almost a little bit embarrassed to even mention suffering, given the privileges that are present for my life. Yes. And having said that, you know, one of my beloved teachers, the Vietnamese Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, said, no mud, no lotus, very famously. It's very much along this line, that it's being in the mud and bringing attention to the qualities that are in the mud that brings forth the lotus. But Sveta, may I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
I would love to hear, given that you and I are brother and sister around seeking to grow through the discipline of love, and finding sometimes that we are harsh like everybody else, what are some of the ways that you work on making love at the center of your practice?
Wow. I mean, yeah, like you were saying earlier, how it is challenging. It's the same for me, like I mentioned already, that yeah, it is challenging, but it's kind of still very much in the forefront at the minute, especially because we are studying this book, and now somehow love is just a constant, like mostly the topic of our conversations. And one thing I have noticed personally in my life is there was a point where everything was ego driven, like to achieve and like to be part of the competitive world and all of that. And I like went through a phase of that, like no longer being the case, like I could no longer do it. So like my life has to shift, and like, I could no longer be like driven by ego. And now I see like I want it to be driven by love, but it's not fully there yet, like, so I'm kind of in the process of like trying to bring more love, understand even what it means. Like we all have this idea of like love is this and that, and oftentimes it's not accurate because in the sense, at least like I would say before, even like few months ago or last year, the idea I had about love, not that I'm saying what I know now is perfect, and our knowledge is also evolving, right? So yeah, I think I can say that I'm in the process of learning what love is, and I'm understanding that it's not something a theoretical knowledge. This is something, it's a realized knowledge, and I can only learn by experience. And it's very, very slow, and a lot of mistakes, like mistakes all the time, and being patient. And there is a sense of suffering, although like, yeah, I want to be mindful, like you're saying, there is so much suffering in the world that I don't want to like, put my suffering on the same level and kind of minimize what is going on outside. But there is still the suffering, like whatever degree that is like given to me, and that is helpful in my process. So yeah, integrating all of that and moving along, and like, allowing love to enter my life, in my practice and in my relationships. And it is very relational. So like even this conversation here, I think that is driven by love. Like I really liked what you said when you came. I mean, because you were a little bit late, and I mean, to be honest, I wasn't actually like, trying to be nice or anything. Like naturally, it wasn't a problem at all. So my understanding is love is natural like that. Like it's not a mental theoretical thing that we try to understand with the head, but something that we feel in our heart, and we just naturally allow it and witness it appear in our lives. So yeah, I mean, to summarize, I said so many things rambling here and there. Just to summarize, it's something that I am learning, and yeah, just eager to learn more and happy to be in this journey, meeting all the different people who are in this same journey like yourself. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's beautiful, Sveta. Very beautiful. Yeah. And I love that you said that love is natural. It's not an idea. It is a flow in the world. And I wonder, may I ask you a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
I wonder, and you can pass, but if you would, it'd be helpful to me if you would be interested in reflecting upon one learning that you've made recently along your journey of learning about love and moving with love.
Learning about love. Okay, something like very recent that I've learned is love is just seeing someone happy, like you do something for someone. And it is, like I said, again, it's not so much like, like a mental thing, like, oh, I want to do this, so let me feel happy. But, just natural, like, thing naturally that I feel affection somewhere and I do it. And it's just like a surprise. It's coming to me like, wow, like I feel something that's just so special, where my self-interest, like it wasn't so much like a selfish
Yes,
endeavor.
yes.
but something that like just happened where I was an instrument in a way,
Yes.
you know, and just experiencing all that was going on, you know. So yeah, that was one of the recent experiences where I felt like, wow, this feels like there is some love here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do you want to share something similar, like in your life, like some experience, similar experience, and maybe Bhakti Rasa could share some afterwards?
Yes, that's good. That's good. So let me see. To me, love is very close to trusting in the aliveness of life. And I recently felt like I was preparing to lead this learning circle that I lead, the Beit Midrash, and we're this time we're exploring Walter Brueggemann's understanding of prophetic imagination. And I found myself really pushing hard to break through to some understanding I was seeking around the different level, not the different levels of imagination, to bring that analysis to Brueggemann's work. And I woke up saying, I'm just pushing on myself.
Mm.
And I said to myself, I'm not trusting that this is truly what my soul is yearning to do. And so I just want to relax and pay attention to what's alive in this moment around imagination. How is imagination part of my moment right now? And just give it loving attention and see what happens with that rather than force it. So that was and it proved really, really fruitful because more of a spaciousness opened up and more of a clarity of the field opened up, and I could see things, and more than see things, intuit things, imagine things more clearly. So that's an example.
Wow, that is such a beautiful contemplation. I'm definitely going to try that. Yeah. Bhakti Rasa, do you want to share something, some of your experience?
Sure. Let's see. For myself right now in this stage, I'm kind of looking within and seeing what it is that's standing in the way of me coming closer to people, closer to love, closer to expressing and being in a loving way. So I have a lot of things that, you know, that come up, ways of being that are written based on old stories and old wounds that I really want to tend to. You use that word, I love that. To tend to these parts that throw just stuff in the way of love, whether it's the way I define it, the way my perspective of how I see people, my own projections that I make. How am I participating in ways that are not love? And to see how I can course correct and how I can heal what it is that's the wounds that are there, that are scabbed over and just glossed over from having bypassed humanity for quite a few decades in my lifetime, to actually turn and address it, and to be, you also used the presence, to be present with that. And how I experience where the turning turning to oneself with self-love and self-care, how that opens the door to relationships with others based on love and
Yes.
self and caring for them as well. So I really appreciate the opportunities that I have within our own Sangha to relate very intimately with many people. I'm a part of some women's circles that we have, and where we really try to integrate our humanity and divinity, and it's the thread throughout all of it is love. And how can we move right now in this moment? How can we move closer to love? And for me, that's addressing anything that is not love within my own, how I treat myself, how I treat those around me. And another aspect also recently is just seeing beauty as an expression of God's love, and how everything just seems and feels so beautiful.
Mm, mm, Thank you for that. Thank you. And I love that you have expressed a sense of sort of tending to these hurt, scarred, scabbed over parts, and that sense of that's all that they need is loving attention for them to return more to the life flow. And that's really trusting. I mean, really trusting in the power of love. That violence has the power to break things up, to stop things, and but love is the only force or whatever that leads to bringing one closer to the flow of life.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've come to see that sin. I've come to Ilia Delio, you mentioned her definition earlier of sin. And to me, I really see that it is, we can understand that it's missing the mark, right? And to me, the mark is love. So what is it that veers our arrow away from the mark? What is it within myself that, what wind is blowing the arrow off target? And for that reason, to look at it and address it. And they are generally the parts of ourselves that have not felt love.
Yes.
So it's natural that these abandoned parts, the neglected parts, create havoc in our journey toward love if they are not
Yeah.
tended to.
Yes.
And Bhaktirasa often says that the greatest sin is to make someone feel unlovable, and that includes ourselves and ourselves. Yeah, I like that. She often says that. And yeah, one of the things I really appreciate, Nahum, you were saying about trust. You mentioned that a few times, like trusting the process, and also like giving up control. It's just so hard for us, right? Like we want to control everything. So just like giving up control, it feels like, wow, such a big thing. So yeah, I mean, do you have like more words to share around that, like giving up control and trusting the process, because it's also in this section, Swami mentions that it's not about the goal, it's the process. We have to be present to the process. It's more process oriented than goal oriented. So yeah, if you'd like to share some words around that.
Well, first, I really want to underline what you just said, Sveta, that means a lot to me, that really paying attention to what's happening now in my aspiration and not the goal, what's the direction and not the goal. I think that speaks a lot to me around that. Yeah. And then I need you to ask the question again because I was so much into that I lost the question, please.
Yeah, I was actually appreciating you saying that trusting the process. You emphasized that a couple of times,
Yeah,
you
I do
trust the
remember.
process.
Yes.
Yeah, trusting the process and giving up control because, trusting the process and allowing love to unfold naturally, like means we give up control. So yeah, I was wondering, like, since that's to me seems like it's important to you, so like I want to,
Yes.
you have more words to share.
Thank you. Yeah, two things come to mind. First of all, there's a area of Jewish tradition called Musar, which might be ethics, which is really the discipline of cultivating virtues. And there's really a sense in Musar of balance. So it's not giving up all control, that as human beings or any living being, we need to have some control over our nourishment and over our safety and over our so it's not giving up all control. It's where is the proper balance point with between chaos and hyper control. Where is that proper balance point? So that's really helpful to me, that it's a discernment. It's not like, oh, giving up control. It's more like the discernment of, can I move a little bit in the direction that I need to move, which is always towards less control. And the second is that, again, sort of a faith in life that, as you mentioned earlier, Sveta, that, the ego really wants objective things to say, oh, I'm successful, I'm a good person, I'm this or I'm that we can hang our metaphorical hat on. And it values, in a sense, the object of things rather than the life within things. And I find the extent to which I can trust the aliveness in the moment, it makes me less needing to steer the moment to any particular outcome. And therefore, it gives me more flexibility, more stability. If I can stabilize myself within a flow of aliveness in this moment, I'm less needing to make this moment go one direction or another.
Wow, that's beautiful. Like, yeah, so you're saying the focus is more on the aliveness of the moment, to just like be alive. Yeah, I think it's so important, right? Like, yeah, somehow like love and being alive, they are together.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, sometimes we do feel like quite not alive,
Yeah.
which is really hard, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I do experience that often, and I do think then like, yeah, to feel alive, to be alive is a service.
Yes.
It's that is to love also, because oftentimes like we just have this idea, like you were saying, I want to do this, achieve this and this and that, without paying attention to what is going on inside and how alive we feel in that.
Yes.
So yeah, just understanding like, yeah, just feeling alive is an expression of love.
Yes.
Yeah.
That love is the fundamental energy of creation. And so feeling alive and love are of the same stuff. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. That is beautiful. Yeah, do you see yourself like, going through these difficult moments where you feel like, oh, there is no aliveness? And do you have like practices or any like recommendations, suggestions for viewers, maybe even, or even for us, for myself, really, to feel alive in those moments, when we don't feel it?
Yeah. Yes. I would go back to what Bhakti said about tending. Can I bring loving, spacious attention to this moment? I mean, let's not flee from this moment because it's not alive and I want to go run to a moment that is alive. I get that a lot. I mean, sometimes my mind, literally, a voice in my mind says, "Get me out of here." Hey, dude, let's split. Get me out of here. You know, um, and it goes back to Savlanut, to patience and wait. But can I trust in life enough to bring gentle, spacious, warm, loving attention to the fullness of this moment? Again, Thich Nhat Hanh says, this moment is full of wonders. Yeah.
Wow, that is such a beautiful recommendation, or like, yeah, I'm definitely going to try that, next time I feel that, which is gonna happen very soon. So yeah, definitely gonna try that, and I'm so grateful to you for sharing that. I can see that, like, yeah, I can already see how that can be helpful, and how that can just shift the energy in that. Because yeah, I mean, even with I mean, I'm like that too when that's happening. It's like, oh, this is a problem. I want to get away, and like, this is not normal, and like, oh, why am I feeling like this? And all of that. And I'm not even thinking like, oh, just I need to actually allow some love here, so I can already like see how that thought can shift that for me. So I'm actually quite very curious now to try it.
Yeah. Well, I'd love you want to drop me a little email or whatever. Let me know how that goes for you. I'd love to hear because
Absolutely.
yeah, sometimes I mean I can say words about this because I struggle with this every day, and not because I've transcended it or learned it all, but more I'm right in the middle of the mud of it every day, and so sometimes I find it really helpful just to take a breath and say inside myself, I am alive. I had the great blessing. I am lucky enough, fortunate enough, blessed enough to have survived a very near fatal car crash where my car was and got hit by a truck. And I lost my spleen and was bleeding to death, and they reached the hospital. And so after that, like, I'm alive. I'm alive. Wow. I'm alive. Wow. I didn't know I was going to get to be alive. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that sounds like, I cannot even imagine what that must be like. That I
When you just do it,
that
I mean, for all of us, I'm alive.
Wow.
Yeah. I want to say one more thing I'm working on about conflict. I mean, right now, given the state of the world, I find myself involved in lots of contentious areas, whether it's trying to care about Israelis and Palestinians both, or whether it's trying to care about people who are on one side or the other side of the political, whatever. I find myself in the middle of lots of this kind of territory, and many of us do in this time. And I'm trying to bring spacious attention. Oh, I don't have words for it. It's like rather than trying to make one of it, oh, we got to get along. Can I see clearly the two of it and see each of the two clearly as a first step before trying to make one of it? That's the closest I can come. It's not quite it, but that can I, again, it comes to tending. Can I see clearly the two of it and let for the moment those two just be there, as much as uncomfortable as it is because they're in conflict? Can they both be there for anyway, something like that?
Yeah,
To me,
sorry, go ahead.
to me, that's something similar to holding paradox, being able to hold opposing sides, opposing elements. And one word that you used many times in our few moments together here is the word spaciousness. So, what is it that we need to clean out or clear out that will create enough space to hold two apparently opposing ideologies or people's ideas, and not only to see them, to recognize them, but I wonder even if there's a necessity to honor,
Yes.
as opposed to like, let's not just tolerate each other. Can we honor people in their perspectives and their roles in their lives?
Yeah. To me, I would want to make a discrimination between I don't want to honor prejudice, hatred, racism, homophobia, misogyny, anti-Semitism, but I do want to honor that people hold those views because they've got some deep need inside that is honorable. Just unfortunately, for whatever reasons, they're acting out of that. It's like I do not want to honor killing innocent people. I don't. I can honor the desire for safety that may lead one to do that. That doesn't mean it's in any way anything but totally deplorable. So I think those distinctions are really, 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 really important, in our conversations, that we be clear about honoring the deep human need and maybe not the distorted, harmful, dangerous expression.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it comes into play with when people are learning how to forgive their abusers, that they're not forgiving the horrible acts that may have been perpetrated, but to understand what is the source of those horrible acts, to know that these people have it comes from a very human place in their own existence. And a lot of it comes from their own wounds, their own brokenness, and how they try to patch it and deal with it and just try to survive their own conditions, and to develop compassion even on that level, to know that like an abuser, if they are able to abuse others, that comes from a very hurt and painful place
Yes.
for them.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember speaking, Swami Padmanabha had a free radical podcast with this young boy who had been abused in his life as a youngster by people in his church. And he he was able to, he tried all different kinds of ways. Oh, you try to forgive. But the only thing that actually allowed a shift in his own heart was when he realized, wow, what it must be like to live inside a person who thinks that abuse is an okay kind of thing.
Yeah.
How much pain that they must be living in. And with that, he was able to find compassion toward his own abusers.
Yes. Bhakti Raja, I have just a couple more minutes. Is there anything else that you would like us to touch upon?
I am, I can't say that I'm at all satiated, but I can say that I have lots of food for thought that you've brought to the table here. And I really appreciate your presence. And
I've really enjoyed our conversation very much and enjoyed and found great value in what each of you shared. And so I'm really grateful that we've had this opportunity to be in love together.
yes, thank you. So we're going to take a pause now and give our listeners the opportunity to contemplate how to bring these things into their own lives. So thank you very much.
Take a moment to reflect on the concept of yourself as a human becoming. How does this perspective resonate with you? Contemplate deeply the idea of your spiritual journey, not as a finite quest for ultimate attainment, but as an ongoing, dynamic process of unfolding and growth. Embrace the freedom and possibility inherent in this perspective, and consider how it transforms the way you view your life, your challenges, and your aspirations.